Welcome to this edition of the Times Techies webinar series. My name is Sujit John, and I have with me my colleague Shilpa Fadnis. The two of us will moderate this discussion. We have a special session today. It's in association with Intel, and it is on building AI solutions at population scale. The idea is that now that we have lots of data and better models, we can use AI to solve some of our biggest problems. Problems in healthcare, education, transport. In transport, Uber and Ola are already doing that in many ways, telling drivers where they could find more customers at a particular time of day, telling them the fastest routes, telling you exactly how much time you will take to reach your destination. So can we solve other similar big problems, and how? To discuss that, we have a great panel, some very senior professionals. We have with us Nivruti Rai. Nivruti is country head of Intel India and vice president of the data platforms group at Intel. Nivruti is based in Bangalore. She joined Intel in 1995 in the US and subsequently worked in the CPU development organization in Oregon. She moved to India in 2005 to manage R&D of mobile platform technologies used for handheld and laptop computers. In 2013, her team was awarded an Intel Achievement Award for contributing to the development of the Minute Intel architecture core. She has been playing a very active role in industry associations to deepen technology adoption in India in areas crucial to the country. Welcome, Nivruti. We have with us Dr. Shekhar Mande. Dr. Mande is Secretary in the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research and is the Director General of CSIR, the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. He has been in this role since 2018. Dr. Mande did his PhD in molecular biophysics from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He's a winner of the prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize. He won it for biological sciences. His academic interests include protein structure and function and computational methods to analyze large-scale biological data. Welcome, Dr. Mande. We have Professor P.J. Narayanan. Professor Narayanan is the director of IIIT-Hyderabad. He's also a researcher in the areas of 3D vision, computational cameras, and parallel computing. Got his bachelor's from IIT Kharagpur and master's and PhD from the University of Maryland, all in computer science. In the mid-1990s, he built the virtualized reality system at the Carnegie Mellon University to capture 3D geometry and appearance of dynamic events. He also was an early adopter of GPUs for several computer vision and general computing tasks. He has been with IIIT Hyderabad from 2000. Welcome, Professor Narayanan. And we have with us Amit Bhatt. Amit is the Executive Director at WRI India. WRI is the World Resources Institute, a global research organization that works in more than 60 countries. Amit specializes in transport. He's based in Delhi and provides vision and leadership to all transport initiatives across WRI in India and neighboring countries. Amit has close to 20 years experience in the field of integrated transport, road safety, and urban development. Amit writes extensively on these issues in leading media publications and portals. Welcome, Amit. Those who are viewing this can send in questions through the chat box. Shilpa and I will put them to the panelists. Let me start this discussion by asking Nivruti and Professor Narayanan to set the context. Why do you think now is the right time to start thinking about building AI solutions at population scale? Nivruti, can you start?
Sure. Thank you very much, Sujit. One liberty I'll take of introducing all of us, which you missed out, is one thing common amongst all of us is we are very passionate about technology adoption. And the second thing is, while all of us, are based out of India, we have a passion to drive solution for India and India's problems. Not just India's solution that can be scaled to the world. That's the one commonality which we have amongst the four of us. And thank you for bringing together such an elite panel.
Wonderful.
Thank you. The reason why technology adoption is more critical than ever is what the world is facing several issues. Even before the pandemic, there were many areas where India was pushing ahead with the national level platforms. We drove things in the fintech space like nobody did. We skipped credit card generation. I'm so happy to realize that somebody who earns just 4,000 to 5,000 rupees a month is able to sell you, guavas on the street through, the e-wallet. You don't have to use credit card. You don't have to use cash because e-wallet. That's the power of technology. You can be so inclusive. And I believe with a thing like pandemic, it becomes even more imperative. We were just talking prior to this discussion. PJN was thinking, how do I bring my children back into the college to go for the regular education? That can happen on the backbone of technology. Healthcare. How many people are suffering because they don't have access to doctors? To just give you a statistic, for 1,000 people, India has 0.8 doctors. And these doctors, not all of them are very qualified. I'm adding up every single person who calls himself a doctor. Now, the countries which are more evolved had 4. How do we make healthcare and the specialist available to the 1.3 billion people of our country? I feel more than ever, the technology adoption should happen now. Also, one last reason is, so I gave you lots of reasons as to what are the problems that we can solve. Now I'm going to come into the solution space, Sujit, just to tell you 1 teraflops, 1 million operations, floating point operation. Floating point means decimal multiplication. In, just the year 2000 would cost 15 or so $1 million. So literally in millions of dollars, which you can compute now. 8 trillion floating point operations can be done in $600. So from millions of dollars to $600, imagine what we can do in genomic study, personalization of medicine, availability of education, because data needs to be transmitted to our children for education if we have to do online. So technology convergence and disruption can be done now. The problems are available now. The problems at population scale are available now. So I feel we have to leverage technology that not only meets our people's needs in healthcare, in smart mobility, in education, agriculture, you name it, but it also creates opportunity for India to lead this digital revolution that the world is seeing, which will happen. It's imperative. And that's why we have to play now.
So all the foundations of AI are there, available, there, absolutely.
Very wonderful question. I'm going to talk about 4 factors. One is people. Second is IP and products. Third is policy. Fourth is data. Just by the sheer mention of these 4 variables, what I can tell you, people, Gartner did an analysis which tells the world's AI resources, 16% are in US, 9% are in China, and 8%, Sujit, are in India. And I assure you, if I rope in the mathematicians, the statisticians, the programmers, the data analysts, I can double the 8% to 16 to 32. I can create resources, maximum number from our country. That's the opportunity. If you look at IP and products, companies like mine, Intel, and many other partners, you just told me that I didn't know the PJN worked on GPUs. So if we look at what are the needs, the system needs, we need products that can compute with the ability to drive instructions which are optimized for artificial intelligence. So a lot of matrix multiplication is the need. And depending on the problem at hand, either a parallel engine, which means many small execution can happen together, or you need one single, scalar execution where one deep operation can happen, or an engine which is only focused, which we call accelerators. So CPU, GPU, and accelerators, which only specialize in large scale, opportunity for AI. And then there are programmable solutions. One is fixed function. Whatever you feed in, it will do that perfectly. The other is programmable solution, which we call it FPGA. You can modify, change on the fly, dynamically. And then on top of that, everybody has existing compute. How do we make our compute smart? It's through software libraries. open source. For example, Intel has OpenVINO. What I'm happy about is I am willing to invest in all sorts of building blocks that are required for AI. And I'm willing to partner with whoever who wants to work towards population scale data and solve the problems of the nation and eventually solve the nation problems of the world. That's why I believe Intel will play a huge role, because think of Intel as a combination of 7 different companies. We have it all. We are a very large company and we have portfolio of products which many companies together have it.
Okay, so people, technology, everything is there for a big AI to scale. Professor Narayanan, by the way, Nivruti has been using the term PJN, that for the viewers, that refers to Professor PJ Narayanan. Professor Narayanan, your views on this?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity, and thanks to Nivruti for setting the context. Yes, the Moore's law has provided us with the hardware capacity. I mean, price dropped, and if companies like Intel really rode on it and created better and better processors every year, and that's why this flops, the cost of flops reduced so drastically. And so that was compute had to be there. And then data. I mean, data, we all knew about. The machine learning was known, but machine learning was never applied at this scale because we didn't have the compute, we didn't have the data, both components. And today, just as computation is available, the number of hours of video uploaded to YouTube or photos uploaded to several sites like Google Photos, etc., will boggle anybody's mind. And same is true with the mobile phones are generating so much data, and some of it is saved, some of it is not saved. And there is also opportunity to collect data on a very, very personal basis. Where the health data, we have people wear Fitbits or other equivalent devices, and they create a whole lot of data. And especially in this COVID times, one of the proposals I heard is to give everyone a smart watch which does a lot of monitoring, maybe your SpO2 monitoring, maybe a few other basic parameters. And it may cost 10,000 rupees, if you build, but if you give it to every single citizen, somebody made a calculation saying, it still costs, the 10,000 rupees into the 2 billion, 3 billion people. That is still less than the hit that the economy took in 6 months, and this can do a lot more than just keep you safe in COVID time. So all these are there, the algorithms are developed, the data is there, the compute is there. And coming to healthcare, I mean, we have been hearing about personalized medicine, and I'm sure Shekhar would have more to say about it. But we all have seen this chart where the cost of sequencing genomes. There is a chart put out by NIH, I think. It's there is a log chart in which the Moore's law is purely exponential. So exponential decline in cost will look like a straight line in the log chart. In that log chart, the cost of sequencing the genome around 2007, it drops so far, below the Moore's law line that, from several $1 million to sequence a genome, or several billion they spent the first time. Today it's less than $1,000, maybe $500. Now that opens up a lot of opportunity to do what is truly personalized medicine. You can be treated different from your neighbor, because your vulnerabilities, your risks are different based on your genetic makeup. We all know that. People get diabetes in the family, people get hypertension in the family, and we kind of know there. But you can take it all the way when you go to the doctor. And if all this data is available, the medicine and its dose may be prescribed just for you. All these are possible today. Now that brings to the other, several different factors that Nivruti mentioned. That is the people as well as the policies. Now both are very important. People, because you need trained people. This data exists, tools exist, but to use them, this is not simple game. If you want to generally create things which work at the top edge, you need to tune it, you need to understand the domain. It is not just, people say deep learning is a black box. Yes, it's a black box, but if you don't understand the dynamics of the domain as well as how these things work, you will not get too far in creating the solution. So you need to massive scale training. That the gap in the requirement is very high. So in IIIT-Hyderabad, we started a executive education program. We have very strong AI program in our regular BTech, MTech, PhD programs. But we are a small institution. We have 2,000 students in total, and the impact cannot be a whole lot, even if they are building the next generation products elsewhere. But we started an executive education scheme where the professionals from around here come. We didn't do a MOOC way. We wanted to have contact based. They would come here and they would, we will have classes and we'll have hands-on labs. They will train. They will use these advanced tools of deep learning or machine learning and get themselves familiar. The response was phenomenal. We teamed up with one of the local companies called Talent Sprint, who was the front end. We did the academic back end. The first batch had 400 professionals, including people who are flying in from Delhi for the weekend to attend these classes. Okay? And we have trained over 2,000 professionals now in the last 2 years on that course. It's a 3-month program. And over 33% of them have 10 years of experience in the industry. These are not freshers who are looking for another bullet point in their resume. These are people who they've been there and they're seeing the potential of AI, or in some cases maybe the threat of AI to their profession. So this is a very important aspect, that we need to have high-end research, which institution like IIIT focuses on, but also training a massive number of people so that this potential can be realized by a lot of people. But any IT professional, around me, there are thousands of companies and there are millions of people out there. They should all be trained, because without that, this also makes India the powerhouse of AI-related development in time to come. It's time to move away from Java, and we started with Java and the basic outsourcing in 2000 or up to 2000 or soon after that. But now India, companies like Intel use India because many of the cutting-edge development can be done only in India, because the manpower we have, the education institutions we have. Next, it should be the AI and the blockchain, all the new technologies. We should have good training and then policies for the data. This is where we need real action from the government, because there is understandably there is worry, there is caution. There's definitely need for caution, and there is worry because of lack of understanding. We have to find the right middle ground. Otherwise, we will not be able to leverage this. So there was a summit like this, again, Intel organized a month ago, in which Kiran Majumdar-Shaw was there, and she was asked this question on, what about privacy issues? She says, anybody worried about privacy should first stop using your smartphone. Then you come to me. Otherwise, you will have no development in medicine or in healthcare if you keep airtight privacy policies. But surely there is need to be cautious. So we need to have quick way of having the right data policies that enable innovation, that enable deployment, but yet keep the key aspects of privacy in mind.
Okay. Yeah, Professor Narayanan, we'll come back to those topics on policies and all that. Yeah, Nivruti, you wanted to say something?
Just one thing I wanted to add, because I missed out, and I think PJN almost covered it. It's just one line that I wanted to say. Why is policy framework so important? Because of technologies like AI and ML, is because they are very algorithm based. There are algorithms that are used to drive these solutions. And when you have algorithms, there are 4 factors that you must remember. And I keep telling my team to remember that and, institutionalize it in your mind. There are bugs. There are some unintentional bugs. You have to fix that. And there are some intentional bugs. Bugs, bias. There's a lot of bias in algorithms. So bugs, bias, and then malware. When you have data as your currency, be prepared. There's going to be malware. And then the 4th thing that bothers me is manipulation. So if you have bugs, bias, malware, and manipulation, you better have a solid policy framework. And I missed saying that, and PJN kind of, went there. So I thought, I will interrupt for a moment and share that.
Okay, we'll come back to this policy issue a little later. I just wanted to, Professor Narayanan spoke about some of the healthcare things that we can potentially do, genomics, personalized medicine. Dr. Mande, I mean, what have you seen? What have you done so far? What have you seen startups and other companies working in the area of AI and healthcare doing? What is CSIR been doing in the space? You have an innovation lab in AI. I read about. So, what are some of the work?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for putting up such an exciting panel together. It's a pleasure for me to be able to share this platform with so many distinguished people here. Both Nivruti and PJN touched upon very important aspects of AI and how AI is actually democratizing many different processes. Whether it's buyers or sellers market, whether it's health, whether it's education, is amazing. The way actually all these processes are getting democratized simply because of the power of technology, what Nivruti very correctly pointed out. Now, it's going to affect our lives in many different respects. Like PJN mentioned that, and health is only one of them. I mean, every respect we are going to see that AI is going to affect our life, everyday life, day-to-day life in the coming times. In terms of health, India actually started this process of digitization of health several years ago, but the process was rather slow in the beginning years. What the COVID times has actually helped is really accelerating that particular process. I mean, if you look at e-Sanjeevani platform that Government of India had created, or many other things that the Government of India had created about telemedicine and so on and so forth, the COVID times have really helped in accelerating all these processes. The COVID times have also helped bringing the Indian academia and industry together. Right? I mean, there's another amazing thing that has happened in the last 10 months that across different institutions and different industries, many industries have come closer to academics, and we should be actually really thankful for the kind of challenge that was posed to us. And because of that, many people came together and do that. Health and AI, of course, as I said, is a very important issue. There are many showcase examples where people have been using. And in India, for example, a very showcase company called Quure AI, Quure AI. It actually essentially is a radiology-based company floated by one Dr. Pooja Rao and Dr. Prashant Warrior. And they have actually multiple options, like they work on tuberculosis, then bleeding in the head injuries, and so on and so forth. And not only a good company, they have very good entrepreneurship, but they also have published their work in very visible journals like Lancet. So it's very good. But there are also many other companies which are Niramai, teleradiology solutions, and so on and so forth, who have been actually working on bringing AI and health together. Essentially, in the health platforms, the AI solutions depend upon either high quality images that are generated in hospitals, either radiology images, CT scans, and so on and so forth, or on multiple parameters like PJN mentioned, like genome sequences or metabolic parameters, and so on and so forth. All of these can be actually used to either personalize the care, or more importantly, in the early detection of diseases. And many Indian companies are actually looking towards that detecting any disease early is really the key to handle that disease very effectively in future. Best example that people know of is cancer, right? If you detect cancer early, there is a larger probability of survival later, right? And that's exactly what most of the AI and health will move together. And CSIR actually has been working in this particular aspect. We have a laboratory in Delhi called Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology. It's a very frontline laboratory which is working on a lot of genomic aspects and so on and so forth. And they are collaborating with multiple other institutes. We have our own institutes. There's a Siri Pilani. Then we have the 4th Paradigm Institute in Bangalore. But we are also collaborating with private companies like Nivruti's, Intel, on trying to bring these solutions to people. And we do hope that we have a very exciting time ahead in this particular respect of combining the health data with AI so that the future of healthcare is even better than what is today. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I remember meeting Niramai. Yeah, they have this technology where you can heat map for breast cancer without even touching the body. You can figure out whether there's a tumor and all that. So it looked very interesting. And I think AI can figure out some of these things better than a human doctor can. Yeah. Amit, yeah, I've read some of your pieces, fascinating work. In India's, Amit, you're muted. Huh? So the fatality rates on Indian roads, terrible. I mean, it's probably the worst in the world, I'm told. But you are saying there are solutions, AI solutions that can be used to address some of these issues.
No, absolutely. And I think we have ignored the whole leveraging data approach for mobility. And I think it's time that we should really prioritize this as a country. And there are a few cases. I mean, road safety, Sujit, you mentioned, but I think there is also a lot of use cases where technology, especially AI, can be used. Let me give you some examples, right? So intelligent transport system, and we know they use sensors, CCTV cameras, and other techniques can really kind of help manage traffic. And we have been using it in some of the cities, but that can be actually magnified multifold if we start using AI and real-time decision making, one to look at traffic flows, but also to prioritize public transport. So cities have attempted bus rapid transit, but even a conventional bus can be prioritized by using these kinds of technology. And so you are then moving a large amount of people in a particular direction. So that's one use case. Second use case is, as you mentioned, accident. And I think we can use the heat maps based on driving habits, infrastructure provisions, road network, etc., and in driver behavior to create heat maps. And some of these can actually predict in advance that maybe you are arriving an unsafe zone. You know, those kinds of modeling can be done, and so that to inform one, what are the bad road networks where there is a more potential of causing a traffic crash. So that's again a very interesting use case to be applied. We can also use this technology, AI specifically, to generate some of smart prediction. So we have been using it for journey time, but that can be further kind of enhanced. Even wait times and travel times in your buses and your personal motor vehicle can be used. The fourth very important thing is, a lot of times when we go in a city, we struggle to find parking. Where should I park? And in Delhi, where I live, there have been usual scuffles with this is my parking, your parking. So you can use AI to actually predict where the spot is empty or where it will be empty. So you can plan your journey accordingly. And then fifth, and which is very interesting, is that, and you know it pretty well, that there's a lot of buzz around electric mobility. And to me, electric mobility is to fundamentally change the way, one, we consume electricity, but also to the way we foresee mobility. So there is a huge option of vehicle to grid and even grid to vehicle kind of mechanism which will play in. So again, you can use AI to kind of look at smart charging, smart parking, and then integration of vehicle to grid and grid to vehicle can all be used. So I think there are multiple use cases, and we have to start moving ahead. And
anything which has made significant progress. I think there's some work which you've been doing with IIIT and Intel and all that, right?
Absolutely, and I think Nivruti is here. So a couple of weeks back, we launched a very interesting report called SAFAR, and SAFAR, which stands for Safer Actions for Accident Reduction. And interestingly, the report looks at some use case example where AI and power technologies have been used to tangibly demonstrate how it can reduce fatality on road. Secondly, it also talks about how can data be leveraged for better decision making. So just an anecdotal example. If you go to a state government and you ask, where are the crashes or accidents or fatal crashes happening? Believe me or not, in most places, you will not find a map. Now, once you start putting geocoding crashes, you will realize there are certain locations where there is more propensity to have crashes than others. Why can't we identify such location and start mapping? And once you overlay these crashes and you do pattern recognition, you will find that there is a distinct kind of similarity where transit infrastructure is more prone to traffic crashes. So can we identify those looking in advance and start treating? Yes, we can. We have to make a start. And that's where the SAFAR report talks about some very important things for accident reduction.
Okay. Nivruti, you wanted to say something?
I would absolutely love to. So the intent, like, Amit very rightfully put, 17 deaths would have happened, Sujit, in India by the time we would finish this conference. And most of the people are the youth of our country and men. It is so sad that, technology presence still, is not being leveraged. So we basically worked together and created that report. And this report, again, is not just us talking the talk. It's basically talking the walk. What we did over the last 3 years, and PGN is my great partner there. Whenever I look at academic support, I turn to him. Sujit, I was telling you, he works and he runs his IIIT-Hyderabad as if it was his company, and he runs value coming out of his students as if that was his revenue. So I turned to him 3 years ago, and we have collected a lot of data, road data, and we can leverage this algorithms that he has built along with us to avoid road accidents by as much as 40 to 65%. And we have demonstrated this POC in Telangana, in Karnataka, in Kerala, as well as in Uttar Pradesh. Now, PJN, Amit, myself, and few of us will be meeting with Nitin Gadkari to look at how can we deploy it at scale. Whenever we have to deploy it at scale, we absolutely need the support of the government, because there is a lot of requirements. How do we leverage? What are we going to measure? These are the kind of images that will be captured. Who owns it? What do we do with it? If the accident happens despite this solution, who's going to be responsible? So many things. And I'm very excited about this particular project, that even if I can save half of the people, 40%, we are already showing minimum, then 8 lives, 8 families, and the number of years.
This is the one that is talking about the heat map, or the other one in the previous discussion, the device inside the car, you said?
This is the device inside the car that will actually give the driver 3-second warning to basically maneuver his vehicle out of an accident. The heat map that Amit talked about is a very interesting. So just like you see COVID maps, with
right.
or the Democratic and Republican map that you saw in the US election, very much like that. For every XY coordinate of any state, city, we can do a color coding. We call it gray zone mapping, where gray means likely an accident can happen, and we also have a legend to say this gray here means the banking of the road is not good, or there are too many potholes, or there's not enough light. And black means many accidents have happened here. We've got to fix it. And I'm very happy to say that both Telangana and Karnataka government are looking at it. And the goal eventually would be to do the entire state and monitor that the blacks should eventually turn into white, which is safe zone. So that's the gray zone mapping. So it has
gray zone mapping will be done through cameras inside people's cars, is it?
Yeah. There'll be cameras, will be, some LiDARs, all solutions. So creating, basically think of a human being, what human being can see. We're going to create eyes, sonars, many such things, such that we can collect data and, leverage data, because accidents happen due to 2 reasons: driver mistake, vehicle problem, infrastructure mistake. So we're trying to address, slowly all of them.
Okay.
So may I add something?
Yeah.
So the data that Nivruti is talking about, that is created with IIIT Hyderabad, one of my colleagues, Professor Jawahar, is spearheading the activity. This, we are driving around in Hyderabad and Bangalore, mostly 2 cities, in a car with a simple camera and a few sensors, not very fancy sensors, not like the Google Map and Google Street View camera, which are very, very sophisticated. And we collect the images, the videos of the runs, and the outside, inside, the road condition, and a few things. After that, we created, such data is available. They call the Kitty data set, some other data set, global data set produced in Germany or US and so on. But there's none in the Indian conditions. And Indian driving is the most crazy and most unstructured. So we wanted to create driving data or road data for unstructured environments like the Indian roads. And we have created that over the last 3 years. This is called the India Driving Data Set. There are 40,000 images some time ago. I think today it's more. There is a team of people who are sitting on the computer, looking at the images, drawing, bounding boxes to show this is the car, this is the road. I mean, because, AI requires not just the raw images is very useless. You need to say what is there in the image, and this is a manual task. Hopefully, we only have to do it for a few thousand or a lakh images, and after that, the system will learn and do it for the rest. And there are videos run, and this is a tool. The data set is a tool to do this reasoning about what's happening on the road. The road has water logging in the roads, or there are potholes, or if there is garbage dumped on the side, and this kind of basic information about the road, as well as if you want to, are the riders or the drivers obeying the traffic, people are wearing helmet or not, people are wearing masks, if you want to, you have to train for all these things. And this data is today an international resource provided, funded by Intel. Intel and us work together, and this has been put out to the world to utilize. So anybody watching this, they can look at the India driving data set from IIIT, and then we conduct workshops and competitions at the global events like the prestigious computer vision conferences and robotics conferences, and people are working on it. And this is this is what brings visibility to the Indian conditions to the world.
So these kind of big projects, who do you think ultimately will create the solutions? I mean,
everybody.
You expect startups and all that to emerge to create these big solutions? Yeah?
Absolutely. The startups, academics. I mean, academics only generate proof of concepts, and hopefully some startups will take it. Take.
This won't require much funding from the government and all that, you think? I mean, government just has to facilitate, is it?
Yeah. This itself may not need a lot of funding, but if you need to, to collect data at a different scale, now you need a huge effort. So data. I met an individual a few years ago. This gentleman was employed by the political parties to know. They pay some agents money to say put up SP or BJP or Congress billboards everywhere, and are they putting it up? They have no idea to know if they're putting up in the rural. So this man was driving in a car with cameras going around and giving that intelligence to people, to the parties. This is because you have no idea. You have no way to audit these things in this country. So similarly, if once you have data to be created at massive scale, and they will definitely, government can use it later for this kind of safety, traffic safety or road planning, road needs repair or not, etc. So yes, if you want to scale it beyond this level, you need a lot of support from government and other agencies.
Okay.
So,
Amit, I want to ask you Sorry. Okay, Nivruti, go ahead.
Just one quick point, trying to answer your question. The government actually has already funded us a lot of money. So the funding is coming from IIIT-Hyderabad, is coming from Intel, and a lot of it is coming from the government, as well as other institutes. For example, for health, PHFI is looking at partnering with us. So we are all contributing with the money and as well as with kind. Kind means experts, our labs, our systems. So last few weeks ago, we actually announced a platform or a research institute. We call it IIIT. And IIIT in Tamil means coming together, and it actually is coming together. And that has the work.
It's also meant to be Indian AI or something.
Integrating AI.
Yes.
Integrating AI. Okay.
But I love the Tamil meaning, is bringing together.
IIIT, yes.
Yeah. So this already PJN, myself, and few other people have contributed. Professor Jawahar, for example, was driving the smart mobility. We've been working for 3 years. So this platform or this research institute was launched. Now this will continuously require money because 3 outcomes will come out of it. Like Professor Jawahar said, annotated and contextualized data for health, for smart mobility, and for education, and eventually we'll add agriculture. Second thing, we'll have unique algorithms. We will create algorithms, we'll give it to startups, they can build on top of it, or academicians can build on top of it, or even, we are figuring out between us, how is a nice way of generating value without moving data elsewhere. So we have, federated platform where we can build small models to others where we don't have to transfer data. So we're looking at all of the security aspect of it. And lastly, even corporates can leverage. Now, for corporates to leverage, we have to think about, what will be the mechanism where this, research institute can benefit with the economics of, taking data. We have not figured that out. As of now, startups as well as academicians are leveraging.
Okay, okay.
It's open source.
Amit, I just want to ask you that question, that device that you have inside the car, something along those lines. Don't you think the government should kind of mandate that all cars or vehicles should have something like that? And how much do you think it will increase the costs of vehicles by?
No, I think one is that we have to look at any devices that makes vehicles safe. Inherently doesn't cost much, because if you look at the amount it saves in terms of crash fatalities and serious injury, it's hardly anything. Okay. I mean, we did some very basic numbers to estimate how much will it cost to make some of the cars with minimum safety features. It won't cost more than $100 or $150.
That's it.
That's it. But if you look at the return that you get on investment is huge. I think we have to stop. So when we export vehicles, we make them all 4-star, 5-star. But we sell vehicle in our country, it's not even 1-star in many cases. Why is it so? And I think we have to start saying that, look, we have safe infrastructure, we need safe vehicle, and then we need safe user, as Nivruti said. Of late, we have been only concentrating on educating the person to save life. I think, come on. We have to do more than that. We have to create safe vehicle and safe infrastructure as well. Only then we will save life. And last point, which I wanted to add on this was, look, in February, we signed the Stockholm Declaration. Mr. Gadkari was there. And we committed to reducing road traffic deaths by 50% by 2030. Right now, numbers is only going up. So if we have to bring it down and bring down substantively, we cannot use the business as usual scenario, and we have to leverage technology. Otherwise, we will not get these massive reduction as we are trying to claim.
Okay.
So this
questions coming in.
Safety device is the 21st century seatbelt or airbag.
I know, exactly. One question to Dr. Mande before I bring in those audience questions. I've been wanting to ask you, and I know we briefly discussed this afternoon. Niramai's solution looks great. My first impression was also looked absolutely fabulous. My colleague Shilpa and I, we had a demonstration of IBM Watson in Manipal Hospital 2-3 years ago. Again, when we looked at it, it looked fabulous. I almost thought, oh, this is the end of doctors. We won't need doctors anymore. Yet, even today, I was doing some Google search and I looked up, found one article which was talking about AI technologies in healthcare, including, they discuss Watson as well. Despite all these years, they're still kind of iffy, not enough confidence in those technologies. Where do you think? You think it's a matter of time? Once we have lots of data, algorithms improve and all of that, these solutions will work better?
There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that it's only a matter of time before it becomes a standard of practice. The use of AI in all these healthcare systems. It all eventually depends upon what kind of data goes in. Eventually, what AI helps you is in predicting the outcome of that particular event, right? And the prediction ability becomes better and better if your data that you have is better and better, right? So more the data, but better curated data is actually what is needed. And if you have both these together, the number as well as curation is even more important than the numbers, then your predictability automatically becomes better. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that things are going to actually moving in that particular direction. And one day, hopefully we will see that some of the medical practices, for example, you will not be able to do very complicated procedures on patients and all, perhaps in near future. But let us say examination of radiology images or CT images and all, I think computers and the AI tools would do much better than what a human intervention. Actually, you look at a picture and make something out of it. So those are the kind of things will happen in very near future.
Yeah.
But other complicated procedures and all probably will take a while.
Okay, okay, very interesting, very interesting. A lot of questions coming in from the audience. Shilpa?
Yeah, this question is from Gopi Sumant. For all the concerns around data privacy, around AI adoption, can shifting to semantic web be a solution?
Semantic web, I mean, they are not related. Semantic web is a concept by which you associate meanings to entities and it help you reason about things. That doesn't directly affect. I mean, I don't see how it can help with the privacy issues, which is really about your data when it's going to the system. Are you sufficiently protected? For instance, the health data or even the genomic data, you may not want your insurance companies to get it because then they will charge you high or low or whatever. I mean, so there are, and you don't want your colleagues to know you are suffering from something. You don't want to know. So, and that's the critical aspect. So, semantic web works in a different plane. So, I don't see the relation.
And actually, that's where I talked about this federated learning platform where you actually don't share data. What you share is a small model. And that's where, your privacy, all of the details and association with, the person, all the anonymity, all of that will be taken care of. And there are many such other solutions that are in the works.
This question from Kundan Saha. As a retail investor, what is the opportunity to invest in AI, ML, deep technology startups? We see fresh startups coming up with brilliant technologies and products. When can a retail investor expect to invest in them? Nivruti, you want to take a shot? Professor?
Investor should invest now. I will tell you why. Yes. Why? Because if you look at the technologies that will be driving the growth in the world due to AI, $13 trillion the world will see in the next 5 to 7 years. Let me tell you what are the technologies within AI that we have to invest in. The number one is vision-based algorithms. So a lot of health where you do diagnostics. And by the way, we have predicted with more than 99.9% accuracy and reduce the false positive or the false negatives with vision-based. So first is vision. Second is the ability to look at voice and language-based processing. And I will tell you the third is retail. Retail will see a total change, a revolution in how retail is done.
Retail, you mean e-commerce, physical retail?
Absolutely. All kinds of enabling, the selling through online media, not just through recommendation engine. Today, AI is only used for search or for voice bots, technologies that will be driving. But tomorrow, you will see a different platform of how we conduct some of these, businesses. So moment of investment is now. Please enable Indian startups to leverage these AI technologies beyond recommendation engines.
Okay. Professor Narayanan, you were saying something?
No, I'm saying nobody ever takes investment advice from a professor.
Okay.
I think this is the time there are a number of startups out there, and there are a number of startups who will be there if there are people supporting them. And here is a big fundamental shift that has happened in the last 5 years, I would say. The startup, earlier researchers or companies, the small number of startups we had, we were hoping to be the next big Google or next Uber or something. And they thought everything that the market was the world and possibly the West. Today, the startups are looking at India, and there are enough to be made, enough to earn from India, enough solutions to provide, enough of impact to be made. And that's a huge shift.
Okay. Okay.
Our technologists are focusing on Indian problems a lot more today than it was 10 years ago.
10 years ago. Amit, you see startups emerging in your area?
No, absolutely. I think we are also seeing a lot of startups who are using technology to kind of create a very tangible change. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So there is a startup which looks at how do you judge the quality of road? By just putting a mobile on dashboard of your car, because it just kind of records the vibration and it tells you whether you have potholes or not. Interesting, there are startups who are working on improving gender safety using technology. So using algorithms of pattern recognition all to finding what are the dark spots in the city, that can be lit up, and so women's safety improve.
Okay.
So I think there are fantastic cases which are coming out. We just need to make sure. So the big problem with these startups is they don't qualify in the usual tender procurement basis. So when a public works department issues a tender, it asks for companies to have, let us say, 10 years of experience, 5 years of experience.
Okay.
Now, as an innovator, how will these people get in? I think that's where the big struggle is happening.
That's a policy change required there. No?
Exactly. Tweaking the procurement process to facilitate this startup can be a very, very great help.
Okay.
Jit, I wanted to just enumerate the 4 technologies. So, it's very clear. So one is AI, leveraging vision and language. 2, I told
language.
Yeah. So, language representation and vision. The 3rd was health and e-retail. The 5th that I missed was the algorithm for fintech.
Oh.
If these are the technologies, they are the ones that will be driving the 13 trillion for the world. But the startups, the one issue that I have with the startups is great ideas plus, but please find out who you will sell these products to. Where is the market? If the world is a market, market for the world, advertise for the world, leverage, global investors as well. So I sometimes struggle with people not having a clear understanding of who is your customer.
I think it's the pure technologists who are getting into it, and they need some partnership with some business folk.
But they forget how to sell.
I know. Healthcare, I think a lot of startups emerging, isn't it, Dr. Mande?
Yes,
does CSIR keep a track of all of them?
No, indeed, there are plenty of healthcare startups which are coming up in this particular area. And we have our own incubators in CSIR labs and some of the academic institutes across the country. And we actually do see emergence of many startups in this particular area.
Okay.
But healthcare is not the only place. Even in agriculture, we are actually seeing precision agriculture. There are a number of startups which actually use unmanned vehicles and using soil qualities and whatnot, using local weather data and combining all of that power into informing the farmer what kind of thing to expect and so on and so forth. So both healthcare and agriculture, to my knowledge, are actually seeing a great emergence of new activity.
I see.
Combining AI and everything.
Oh, very good. Very good. Shilpa?
Yeah, this question is from Sunil. What kind of AI solutions are being developed to combat climate change, if any?
I think Dr. Mande, that's for you, I think.
See, so the climate change is probably one of the most complex issues that we are dealing with. And the consequences of climate change, of course, are multiple. That is, the global temperatures are going up, the glaciers are melting, we are losing biodiversity, and so on and so forth, right? And all of it are an indirect consequence of the anthropogenic activities, right? Whether use of fossil fuels, or whether the use of energy in not the same sense that what it should be used and all, and so on and so forth. So it's a fairly complex issue on how to do that. And as of now, the quality of data and the amount of data that is actually being collected, for example, data on ocean currents, right? The very minute granular data on the temperature differences in different places, the minute data on the biodiversity in different regions such as Himalayas or Northeast or in the plains and so on and so forth. So all of it actually people are trying to combine this data and trying to predict these climate change models. What is clear is that the climate change is real, right? I mean, scientists are very fond of telling policymakers is that please trust scientists and climate change is real, Just like what scientists have been crying for last about 20 odd years, that the next wave of pandemic is just around the corner, right? And many people did not believe that the next wave of pandemic is around the corner. And when it hit us about 10 months ago, we were least prepared for it. As all of us living in the era we actually were not very well prepared for this kind of a pandemic, and we didn't think that it would happen in our lifetimes. The same way, we are all telling the policymakers that climate change is real, and therefore it is up to us to make sure, based on all the data that is going into these predictive models and all, where we can improve. For example, which kind of carbon source we can use, what kind of renewable energy we can use, how do we conserve our water, how do we make sure that our biodiversity is conserved. So all of these actually fairly complex parameters, they would help us in evolving better policies in the coming time.
Okay.
Sujit, I have one company, it's called TAI. And I'm personally looking at it. It's amazing. What it is doing is firstly measuring how much change. Everybody talks about global warming, but these guys are actually looking and reading the coral reef, whether it is in Lakshadweep or whether it is in Australia. The impact of global warming on coral reef tells you what is the situation of the warming. And they're looking at ways which is, to leverage AI and basically address the issues within the ocean and then look at how do we resolve overall. What I loved about this company, the TAI, is they are not just looking it as a CSR activity. When you say CSR, when you say, oh, this global warming impact is going to help my children, therefore I'm going to, work on it. Immediately people say, not for me, and the investor also kinds of things like a research product, let's push it to PJN, why should Nivruti look at it or some, company look at it. What I loved about this company, and I want to, share it with Shekhar, they are looking to generate businesses out of it. The minute you start showing ROI and value to the investors, they get interested. So this is another company who's very interestingly looking at, how do we drive reduction in global warming through monitoring and then through leveraging AI, creating businesses and addressing the global warming in the long term. So another, good company that, I wanted to mention.
Okay, interesting. Several questions coming in. I also have a question.
Just one comment, Sujit, on this.
Yeah, Amit.
I mean, if you look at the whole emission profile, so on one side, close to 80% of global GDP comes from cities or urban economies, as we call it, right? But 70% of the emission also comes from the cities. So to me, the battle of climate change will be won or lost in cities. Now, if we can use the technology to make our cities sustainable, better from what they are, then obviously we will contribute towards climate change, and that should be our agenda.
Okay. Sorry, there is a number of questions. I thought we'll just. This is from Nikhil Chandra. Who is driving capital investments into computer vision and algorithm development in order to build these population scale? I mean, I know you kind of answered it earlier, but there's a specific question there.
Maybe I'll take it.
Yeah.
The platform, the AI open source, open API platform that we are building, initially the investment was from Intel and Professor PJN, and some amount of investment coming from government of Telangana. But now we have significant funding coming from Department of Science and Technology, as well as look at a few other places, other participants, and that's how we are generating this money. Because as we make these platforms more available, look at more verticals, health, smart mobility, education is what we have been working on, but we do want to address agriculture because the government has asked us for agriculture, and I definitely believe that there is value. So more and more investment will be required, and PJN and I are looking at how do we generate that kind of resources beyond the two of us, and looking at DST. So it's an ongoing process.
Okay. I want to ask you, do all of you agree on Kiran Mazumdar's position that you should not bother too much about privacy and all that?
Not really. There are times when there are critical things that we have to worry about, but several research developments will require that you have access to data. If you make it totally anonymized, or totally remove the context, then how do we find out things? So there is you should have a cautious but progressive position on that. Not blanket no or blanket yes.
Okay.
My 2 cents, Sujit.
Sure.
And this, I actually stood up in London School of Economics and spoke. And actually did that in, with few Oxford professors over there. My point, I agree with the privacy, anonymity of all of the data. But do you know what is happening in our country today? I know myself, and because I have been dealing with this Singapore Research Institute, they are reaching out to the people of our country who don't have money to feed their families on a daily basis. They are buying data from them and they're happily selling. So I feel, who owns the data? Our people own the data. If our people are willing to share the data to feed the people that are going hungry, they should be allowed. However, if PJN and I don't want to share our information, we should not. In that case, technology comes to save you. We are looking at ways where your data is anonymized, your data is secure, and then the value of the data is shared. Like I told you, the federated learning platform. So if the owner of the data, owner of the currency is okay, but stealing should not be allowed. Without my knowledge, you cannot use my data, is my belief.
Yeah, Dr. Mande.
Yeah, 2 cents worth of mine. I completely agree with Nivruti. What I would like to state is that one of the deepest philosophical questions of our generation is who actually owns data, right? And I think we need to have, it's not a very simple answer like what Kiran Muzumdar said, that when it's yes or no. Actually, very deep philosophical questions, a question of our generation. I'll just give an example. About 40-50 years ago, there was a lady called Henrietta Lacks. I don't know whether you have heard of her. And out of Henrietta Lacks, some people made cell lines, what are called as HeLa cell lines. And these HeLa cell lines now are used all over the world. They have been sold for billions of dollars till date. And it's a very good cancer model. But Henrietta Lacks and her family lived in abject poverty since then. Last 50 years, she of course passed away, but her family has always lived in abject poverty in US. It's only now that US government has woken up and said that we must give back something to her family 50 years later. And that actually brings it to the point that today, when we are talking of data policies, whom does the data belong? What Nivruti said very rightly, we must debate, involve ourselves in debates on all of these points, and we must take a very considered call on every piece of data. Who owns the rights of this data? Who should benefit by that? If the larger society appears to benefit, so be it. In that case, we can actually make the data available. But if you are using some fiduciary information, then that fiduciary information must be kept along with the person who has that provided particular information. So I don't think there are any easy answers to this question.
Answers? Yeah. Is the government trying to frame a policy or something?
Yes, I think the data policy is pretty much on cards. I think the discussions are going on at this moment. Hopefully, we will get good solutions in the coming time.
Okay. What Nivruti said reminded me, the CTO of one of these big global companies, I forget which one now, he actually said this some years ago, that there will come a time when there will be a technology platform, some technology which will enable users to decide, okay, I want to sell my data for such and such price or whatever. So the owner kind of decides and gets something in return for that.
Or for example, the data that we are collecting right now, PJN and I don't have any data which is, person specific. But if, for example, there is a platform which has person specific health data, that the persons whose data is in the repository can define a certain, category of data, shareable, non-shareable, this, that. We can come up with various ways to meet our people's need. But I fully agree with Shekhar. If, for example, there is a need for larger good, we have to step above, but with the consent of people whose data is being leveraged, who owns the data eventually.
Okay. Amit, did you want to say something? No. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, but and I think absolutely agree to the view. But I think sometimes we overstretch this argument. And so elementary data sharing, like where is the bus? Can I see the bus on map? Is it moving? Which stops have which many passenger boarding alighting? No, these are very elementary information that cities don't share using this fear of data privacy clause.
Oh, really?
But it does too much damage. So I'm saying some of the elementary data sharing, and Delhi has come up with a very nice open transit data policy, and you can also currently look at all the buses where they are moving. But I'm saying these are very elementary data points that needs to be shared, and we should start moving ahead in that direction.
Exactly. And we run out of time, but Shilpa, you have questions?
Yes, this question is from Rahul. How much of research on AI is being done through open source organizations? How does this ecosystem incentivize students and research scholars?
So actually the latest trend in the current AI, almost everything is open source. At least the code is open source. You know, today the value is in the data. The model, the big companies, the Googles and Facebooks and Amazon, they all work on the models, the neural network or other models, and the whole code is put out. I mean, every researcher puts out the code on open platform for other researchers to use. But so the open source itself is now that is the norm. If people will not like you if you say I will not put out the code. They think something's wrong. So, but code itself means very little now. If Google builds a face recognition system, they train on 1 billion faces. Okay, where do I have the access to or compute power or wherewithal to train on 1 billion or more faces? Similarly, for you see fantastic the Facebook platform will translate any language to any language. At least it seems like, right? It will translate things for you. May not be very good, but it exists. So the data access has become very, very critical now.
Okay. A quick question. This from Soumit. For implementing AI at population scale, what are the prerequisites or expectations from the population in terms of resources? I know you mentioned data, of course. Anything else? And he's asking, are there populations for which AI-based solutions are incompatible?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah.
But I can tell you one thing that I started with. Whenever I look at AI solutions, there are 4 things I think of. People. So training and skilling of people. And, like PJN beautifully said it, AI, think of it in 2 ways. Are you creating, a system or software, hardware to build AI solutions? And then the second one is, are you leveraging this to drive a solution for a certain vertical? And in India, I believe we need to do both. This building AI system, very few people do it, but using of AI, very many people will do it. So I am looking for, people to train themselves in understanding, but understanding the larger problem so they can leverage AI. Second thing is product and IP. Like PJN said, many of those systems are available. You can leverage frameworks, TensorFlow. There are so many, Intel has so many solution systems that can be leveraged. Then comes policies, which you have to look at protecting your algorithm from bugs, bias, malware, and manipulation. Now these algorithms can be proprietary because they are their own. They are the bread earners of companies. And then lastly, data. I will be very candid with you. In United States, the data is owned by big companies. For example, the Amazons, the Googles, they own the data. In China, the data is owned by the government. Unless the government says, yes, the data cannot be shared from this company to the same company to another team. In India, what we want to do is to have a democratic way of collecting data such that people own data. And the repository of the data could be with academic institute or government clouds, but the data has to be owned by the people in a manner where Amit said it can be shareable when it creates value for the people. Like Bangalore traffic reduction or traffic maintenance through understanding should be made available. But if there is a personal data, then we have to give the ownership to the people. So these are the 4 things. Think of those when you look at solution of either building AI or leveraging AI.
Okay, okay. Have you suggested this to the government, Nivruti?
Absolutely.
Ownership and
Absolutely. I am going to, therefore, I'm partnering with Shekhar because Shekhar has the years of the Prime Minister and everybody. So, I'm leveraging Shekhar to, give my opinions. Leveraging him, Amit is leveraging him. So we will provide a voice and a solution. And Sujit, you could help us,
Sure.
publishing a lot of this kind of requirements.
Sure. Any, Shilpa, I think there are some questions, but I think we run out of time. Yeah. So any last comments anybody wants to make?
I have one comment that I would like.
Yeah, sure.
I have one ask from all the panelists and others who are listening. Today in India, to get the first response on filing a disclosure is 3.5 years. That saddens me. To get the patent, first, delivery of my patent takes more than 5 years. We are only better than Brazil. If you look at so many other countries, in United States, the first response comes in less than 12 months and the patents 2 years. Typically, an invention, you can create money or value or economics out of it for 2 years. We are already late when we take so long. So as industry coming together, academia coming together, CSIR like organizations coming together, we have to help our country get the first response faster. Otherwise, all the good minds, bright minds will file their patent elsewhere.
Okay, so you're saying it takes up to, how much time does it take here now?
First response, meaning I have filed my disclosure, which is not even a patent, takes 3 to 3.5 years.
Oh my, okay.
And to get the patent, 5 years.
5 years.
And I take the blame to myself also. I'm a responsible Indian citizen. What have I done to expedite this? So my ask is all of us work together, because otherwise the international patents that we have in our country by 2019 was 2,000. So small. And the reason is very simple. People's ideas will not be creating value. So what can we do together? And like I said, I'm also to blame. This is a problem.
Is it a matter of manning, increasing the manpower?
Probably, because
no technology can be applied on this, is it?
Technology can be applied. More people can be applied. Can this be, a initiative where corporate academicians, government officials all come together and, just like we have jury in US, can we have jury for first response? And people get picked up, people who have capability. Otherwise, Sujit, our country will, struggle. I am just looking, I wanted to share the last information. If you look at the number of patents filed on AI across the world over the last, I would say, 5 years, 37% are in China, 25% are in United States, 14% are in Japan. We are not there. So we have to look, if we are looking at AI and patents, we may have to license from Japan and say, hey, Japan, we have 9% of the AI resources licensed to us or partner with us. But we have to generate our own patents. We have smart students.
Okay, great. So, yeah, that's one issue, patenting, that needs to be addressed. People, we have phenomenal strengths, but also you are doing a lot of skilling, and hopefully that will address that part of the technology foundations very much there. Fascinating solutions emerging in a number of areas. Thanks a lot to all of you. Thanks to Intel for associating with us. Thanks, Nivruti. Thanks, Professor Narayanan. Thanks, Dr. Mande. Thanks, Amit. Great discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Very much. Very nice.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.